so much, Sandra. A new survey reveals more than 60% of those ages 18 to 29 do not have a single credit card in their wallet. While it might seem fiscally responsible, could it backfire? Ben Domenech is with me. He's the publisher of The Federalist and joins us from Washington. Welcome, sir. Good to have you on the program.
Great to be with you.
So interesting that the millennials do not want to charge. What kind of implications does this have?
You know, there are a number of implications in terms of the broader economy, but I think what we are really looking at here is a generation, the largest generation in American history, which has taken a lot of lessons away from the financial turmoil of the past several years, particularly of their teenage years. And I think that what they've come away from it with is a real aversion to risk. We see over and over again in poll data that millennials do actually want to get married, they do actually want to own a home, they do actually want to form a family, and yet when you actually look at the way that they act, they're very risk averse. They don't actually want to do anything that would put them in a risky position. And I think that that's something that, you know, as they get older is going to be a real problem if they don't actually change their ways and build a credit history and actually engage in the kind of debt that's necessary in order to purchase a home or actually move into adulthood along the lines of what we've seen in prior generations.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the kind of conservatism that they're using when it comes to money. Why do you think that is? Is because they were young and sort of growing up during the financial crisis of 2008?
I think that that's a significant part of it. I think additionally to that, what we've seen is a rise of a significant distrust of institutions among millennials when we look at the poll data that indicates that they'd rather have their money in a savings account than they would in the stock market, for instance. And I think that that's something that's a real concern going forward in terms of how they interact with the broader economy. Millennials are very distrustful of these institutions politically as well, which is one of the reasons we've seen the rise of some more libertarian influences in there. And I think that that's something that is only going to develop as they get older, and it's going to affect the way that they interact both with the economy and with our political structure.
Yeah, I think you make a good point in terms of, you know, creating a credit structure and a background so that you're able to buy significant things at some point. What other implications of the millennials do you point out in terms of what they're spending money on?
You know, I think that when you look at the way that millennials are spending money, they prefer to use debit cards. They prefer to really pay everything off if they do have a credit card. And I think in terms of the way that they're interacting with the economy right now, we see them doing it in a lot of interesting and new ways, both in the form of the sharing economy and in engaging it in a sort of user-on-demand way, using all sorts of new apps and technology. But I think that there's also a real hesitancy on their part to invest in the kind of traditional purchases that we've seen in prior generations. And I think that that's going to have, you know, as I said, a lot of implications going forward. This is the largest generation in American history, so it includes multitudes, and they're going to interact with the economy in a lot of different ways. It's going to be interesting to see how many of them delay adulthood or how many of them just forestall it entirely and never really shift to the kind of patterns that we've seen traditionally in America.
So the largest generation that we've seen, you know, we focus so much on the baby boomers because of that. Yeah. Millennials, what else do we watch in terms of impact? I mean, housing and whether or not they're going to buy homes. You mentioned the sharing economy. They'd rather rent, right?
Yes, they would rather rent at this stage. A lot of them are averse to owning a home just because of the risk factor, though poll data does indicate that eventually they'd like to have one along the same lines of eventually getting married, even though we have an older marital age among millennials than we've seen at any point in American history. I think that what we're really going to see from them going forward is a very disruptive effect in terms of the changes that they're going to have on the economy and our political framework, frankly, going forward over the next several decades. We saw how big of an impact the baby boomers had in terms of affecting the American economy and the American political structure. I think that millennials are going to have a similar outsized impact for really decades to come.
And in terms of the cost, do you have money figures on the kind of impact that they could have in a whole host of sectors?
You know, I think that in terms of the way that they're going to impact, you know, sectors going forward, you know, there's a lot of different things that we don't know really about the way that millennials are going to live. And I think that particularly one of the things to look at is family formation and how their household formation and the delays of that are going to affect child rearing and the kind of purchases that they make and decisions that they make when it comes to the way that they raise their children going forward. We're seeing the older millennials just really enter into that, and it's going to, I think, impact the country in a lot of different ways in the terms of the way that we look at their life patterns going forward. A lot of them have been perfectly comfortable staying single longer, renting longer, and living essentially the ways that a lot of people who've just gotten out of college live for a long time. But we'll have to see whether that's going to change as they enter their mid-30s, et cetera.
Really interesting. Ben, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Great to be with you.
We'll see you soon. With the Federal Reserve kicking off its two-day policy meeting today, a new survey from Bank of America Merrill Lynch says